application. The districts have to be approved prior to receiving any applications or taking those up for consideration. The OPRA actually expires end of December 2026. So kind of with a 2-year sunset coming up, staff and I just felt that it'd be better just to do one big district in the downtown area for property owners to take advantage of if they meet the criteria and they choose to. There is no change in anything if this district was adopted. There's not an additional tax. There's not an automatic tax abatement. Nothing changes. This just essentially opens up the door for property owners to submit an application to take advantage of an OPRA tax abatement.
Thank you, City Manager. So we have a request for public comment. If you could state your name for the record, please, Luann.
Hi there, I'm Suzanne Wilkes. So I came to talk about this, and I didn't notice on the consent agenda that they're already setting up a hearing that wouldn't be possible if you didn't pass this district. Now, a couple questions, and most of mine were questions anyways. Last week, you voted to have a public hearing. Does it not take 2 meetings to do, to have a proper, so this would be the first meeting of public hearing, and next meeting would be the next public hearing? You have to have 2?
No, last meeting, they took up for consideration setting up the public hearing. The public hearing is tonight.
So you're only having 1 for this subject? Because a lot of times you have 2 public hearings. Is that required?
No, we only have 1 public hearing for most issues, unless state law requires us to have 2. This one only requires us to have 1. Each application that comes in has to have its own public hearing as well, but establishing the district is just 1 public hearing. So
Okay.
I guess in theory, like I was saying, in OPRA requests in the past, there could have been the appearance of 2 public hearings, because what we used to do was a request on the parcel to establish the district, which would have been named specifically that parcel, and then there would have been a public hearing for their application. So the perception was that there could have been 2, but right now we're just establishing 1 big district so anybody can submit the application in if they meet the eligibility requirement. So technically there is 2 public hearings. 1 is to establish the district, 1 is to take up the application. We're doing the district portion right now, and then we'll do the application one at the next meeting.
Okay. And also, so you know, this and the tax abatement policy and board docs, the links are not working. So citizens like myself who try to do research on what these things that are being passed this week are not available to us. So as far as our notice, I think last week we had letters go out on this policy as well to citizens all over the city prior to this body even talking about this issue and voting to speak about having this district. So letters went out prior to the city commission meeting to property owners. So I think a lot of things now I see possibly with this agenda item, why this has been such a rush. If you were gonna just do that one, then you could have just done it. We don't have to shove the whole policy through in 2 weeks because one person would like a tax abatement. And I'm all for that. I'm all for lowering our taxes. But I had a couple other questions about this policy. Number 1, it's easy to say there's no ramifications on the city with this policy because it's a tax, it's just not an increase. But you're only putting it in the DDA, our good old DDA district. We've talked about that many times. This is a TIF district, and it's my understanding that the TIF is going to be renewed, although we don't get that from minutes, but I've got it from other folks. So maybe you could talk about that, Brian, if you're exploring that in the DDA. The minutes hasn't talked about it yet, and I talked about it over a year ago when I was on there. So by offering only the DDA district as our TIF district, I mean as our obsolete property district, whatever you want to call all the letters, you're not taking any money away from the city. That's correct. You're taking money away from the DDA again. So after 20 years of paying for something that we don't own, we're going to renew a TIF for 15 years, and any tax abatement that comes from this obsolete property district is gonna come from the DDA. So whatever project they hope to do that might actually benefit the downtown now in the next 15 years, because we didn't get a benefit in the past, will be diminished by this policy, as far as public good is concerned. So along those lines, I didn't see any DDA meeting. I know when Brownfield Development, we go in front of the DDA and talk to them about that. I wondered if the DDA was consulted, took a vote on if they're willing to give up this money, this TIF money, to this program. Again, I'm for it, but there always seems to be, let's slip it in, let's send the letter out first, and it just casts dispersions on the process, because we can't seem to follow Open Meetings Act issues, public notification issues, public hearings, and so I wondered if the DDA has voted on this. Can you help me with that? You guys are gonna be voting on this next week, and you're voting on the tax abatement thing today, which is basically the same program without a geographical area, it seems to me. So it seems to be even a more sweeping tax abatement program, although it's criteria. There's just so many questions. So Manager Chapman, maybe you could answer, in the event that we make the Downtown Development Authority and they give up their TIF to do this in the downtown, can separate businesses, like they have in the past, just create an additional district so we can give these obsolete buildings for just special folks? Like I know Ashman Street got tax abatements, I know Osborne Commons, I believe, even Justin Nepper got a small tax abatement, and I'm all for it. But can we have more than one district so that you can now go outside of the DDA district and also give this same obsolete tax abatement to other folks?
Thanks, Luann. City Manager, do you understand the question?
I think so.
Okay.
Is the question, can we have more than one district?
Yes.
Yes.
So then why would we designate just the DDA as this district when you can pick and choose buildings subjectively as you wish to include them in the district? Why not the Erickson's, old Erickson's appliance building, or maybe you plan to? I don't understand.
So I think there's a misunderstanding on what the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act is.
Maybe.
So the Obsolete Property Rehabilitation Act is a tax incentive for obsolete buildings within a district that somebody's intending on to do work. So we can set up a district per parcel, or we can just do one big district. There's no limit on the districts. We could set up each individual property as a district. Setting up the district doesn't do anything except make that area or that parcel within the district eligible to make the ask for the tax incentive. It doesn't do anything else. Oprah's were targeted in the downtown area because it's really the only area that makes sense to have an Oprah. You can't use it for residential structures, you can't use it for multi-use family structures, you can't use it for commercial structures on the business spur, you can't use it for industrial areas. You can
Why-
really only,
Yeah, why not on say commercial on the business spur only, but commercial downtown is okay? I wondered about that. If it's commercial is allowed, why just in the downtown?
I guess I take it back, probably can be commercial.
Okay.
Downtown really only makes sense because there's enough work that we would want to encourage in terms of seeing redevelopment in that area. But again, if somebody came up on the business spur, we could put a district in there. There's no limit to the districts. We are putting in this district in the entire downtown area to make it easier for people to apply for these because it's sunsetting in the next 2 years. So if we have the district set up, somebody has a project they want to do, they submit their application, goes for scheduling of the public hearing happens, commission makes that decision. So it's just an efficiency versus doing an individual district for an individual property, having that public hearing done, and then going forward with the rest of that process. We do half that process up front. It opens it up to anybody that wants to take advantage of it. It's not an automatic. It doesn't impact anything. And the Oprah actually doesn't take money away from the TIF per se. It freezes that tax increment. So if somebody's taxable value, just easy numbers, is $20,000, we're gonna do enough work to increase that to $60, $80, $100,000 in taxable value. The Oprah freezes that for a period of time. So it doesn't take money away. It's
But
taking
that-
future gains away,
But that's
but
what
they're
TIF
still
is.
retaining what they have there.
Right, but
And
that's
then
what,
once it unfreezes, uncaps, then the money will go back to the TIF.
that is what TIF increases are every year when they capture the value that are increasing through the market or through development now, and that money would not go to the DDA anymore. So it absolutely freezes, doesn't allow them to get tax increases, the DDA. So I'm not sure about that last statement at all. So, are you intending to use the tax abatement policy that's also being passed today without any public hearing is it criteria only, and then you have to have another lever to use the criteria, like the obsolete property, or is the tax abatement policy something you can use on its own, or do you only kind of use, because obsolete and development, all that stuff, obsolete opens it up to anything you want to say it's not having a good use, not just blight. So, is that tax abatement policy have to be paired with another lever, or is it a tax abatement policy and it allows for the council to give tax abatement based on that criteria only?
Why don't we tackle that when we get to that item? And you've
Right.
asked to speak on that as well.
Yeah,
So
the
let's,
thing-
let's stick to the,
Yeah. I
this is
was
a
just gonna
hearing
say-
to approve the obsolete property rehabilitation district is all.
Well, I think
the DDA,
these
so-
items are just like this, and they've all been put in very quickly. Like the tax abatement, it says, oh, we talked about this many years, and and they even use this obsolete as an example. And I think all of it has to be looked at, and the fact that we have such a small tax base already, I think it's interesting to give more, developers, you use developers a lot. Are current property owners the same as developers, and what would that, how does that, because in the past, there has been talk that that's, because you guys get the say of yes or no, without any criteria at this point, so I'm really happy to see the criteria go in, so it would be a more level playing field of who gets the tax abatements. This would be used for existing property owners as well? Any of these programs for tax abatement?
Or we're still talking about the Oprah, right?
Yep.
Okay.
If they meet the criteria,
What criteria?
There's
Because
there's a whole set of programs that's contained in the policy, and I'm not sure why your links, aren't working. My link's been working all week long. There's a whole set of tax abatement programs that this policy is trying to encompass. It has PA 198, 1974 industrial facilities tax, PA 225 commercial redevelopment tax, PA 210 commercial rehabilitation tax, PA 146 Oprah, PA 381 Brownfield Redevelopment Financing Act, PA 90 the Housing Tax Increment Financing Act, PA 328 personal property exemption. Again, we are not able to just willy-nilly give out tax abatements. There has to be a state program that's enabled through state statute
Okay.
that says we can. So in broad terms, if somebody meets the qualifications of any of these programs or any future programs, they can submit an application, goes to the appropriate board, takes up for consideration.
Okay. Again, I mostly had questions, and I doubt I'm alone. Even, I include the commissioners in that, and I don't see any reason that you would pass any kind of program like this without speaking to the DDA. Number one, I didn't get an answer from Manager Chapman if the DDA voted on this. I know he's an active member. So I just don't know what the rush is. Even if you want to do 229, then you can have their two-meeting thing like you did any other. Just think when we rush things, it erodes confidence. When we don't put things last meeting, 1 hour before the meeting, I could access no agenda. I know how to access these, I access them regularly. I wonder if it was taken down to add that item, because that letter had already gone out regarding this program prior to this body approving it. So that's all I guess I have to say. There's a
All
lot
right.
of questions and not a lot of clarity.
Thank you, Sue Ann. Anybody else in the audience that would like to make any comments at this public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and go to the commission. Any commissioners have any comments? Commissioner Habusta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, I tried to ask this question and I didn't ask it very well, and I apologize again. I do have concern with the district being limited just to the downtown district. As the city manager said, the downtown district is really where it should be, but even in this documentation, which was sent out with the agenda and the agenda items. In many cases, this could be an abandoned multi-story industrial building that is now more suited for commercial or residential units. I think if a certain school bond passed and there were 2 school buildings, that would be an opportunity for a developer to come in and to switch those to rental units. It provides an opportunity for people outside the downtown district to improve their buildings and offer tax exemptions to them as well. So I would definitely support expanding this district, not limiting it just to the downtown, and I think it's important that we do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Gage.
Just a couple. So, I know City Manager Chapman mentioned something that the law is gonna sunset in 2 years. Is that the law is gonna sunset and then this will be obsolete in 2 years? Not part of the fun. I didn't even think about that. That's funny. So is the law sunsetting and then it just goes away and this would go away too?
So, yes, so, and it would be more so, to be more specific, it would be the ability to request the tax incentive. So like, if you approved one this year, but the law sunset in 2 years, that exemption still carries forward for the period of time that was approved by the
Can't
governing
request
body.
anymore. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, I think I understand a little bit why we would establish a district. It's a way to maybe kind of advertise and tell the DDA specifically, like, hey, kind of highlight it as specifics. But nothing prevents us from, like it was mentioned, like if Erickson's up on the business spur wanted to do something like this, as a commission, we could do that as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. So really, I think that, like, I appreciate the thought that was given and the thought that was shared. And it definitely, I can understand sometimes in an era where folks question lots of things and things don't always pass the smell test. It's good to be skeptical and good to question that. So I appreciate the views that were shared and that kind of stuff. To me, I think this is kind of just establishing a district as a way to advertise it and set up some guidelines. It doesn't seem to be a lot more than that, but maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. And I had another thought, but I forgot it, so I'm done.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Bosworth.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Gage, I agree with you on that, and I just wanted to double check, but you kind of answered it, or City Manager, that it's not limited. If we're just saying the district DDA, like downtown, but it's not limited to that, so.
Correct.
Correct, yep. Okay. That was my main question also. Thank you.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
And I'm assuming we can't just blanket the entire city?
So it doesn't make sense to, and part of that is there has to be notices of the public hearing sent out. So if you blanket the entire city, you're gonna have to send a notice to every single parcel in the city, and that's kind of pricey. So I mean, if there is, again, there is no limit to the number of districts we have. So if there is another opportunity that comes up in a different area, we just establish the district. Just the more than likely area that we will deal with, based on what we have dealt with, will be the district as it's proposed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gage.
I remembered my thought. So I definitely, though, one of the things that I guess I don't have any problem with is much like the policy we discussed at the last meeting, the abatement policy. like if it kind of helps answer some questions and gets people more on board or less concerned about how fast we're moving on this, I wouldn't mind if we wait till the next, or if you guys wait till the next meeting, because I won't be here, but I wouldn't mind, I mean, I don't have any problem like delaying it so that more people can talk about it and have more clarity, but that's just my 2 cents.
I think it's one of those tools that we can have to encourage development, and the DDA makes perfect sense. I know that we have some people that are working on development downtown, and some of this will certainly be to their advantage and to our advantage as a community, so. And I think, as the city manager said, if we find other properties or other areas that want to benefit from this, then we just create another district, or we take those properties individually. So, any other thoughts, questions? Do we have a motion to approve the resolution to approve an obsolete property rehabilitation district in the DDA? Commissioner Bastos-Rath.
I'll make that motion. Motion to approve the included resolution to approve an obsolete property rehabilitation district in the DDA.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any other questions or comments before we have a vote? Wonder if we could do a roll call on this one, please?
Mayor Gary,
Yes.
Commissioner Bastos-Rath,
Yes.
Commissioner Gage,
Yes.
Commissioner Habusta,
No.
Commissioner Marble,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Yes.
Motion passed with 1 dissent. Thank you very much, everybody. Under E, special orders of business, number 2, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request to approve the single lot special assessment rolls SL2N-24 and SL2W24. So this is part of our annual process where we bring forward any kind of unpaid invoices for the various processes with the city. Property owners have been noticed of the outstanding charges. This will confirm moving those unpaid invoices onto the property tax roll. So if there's any questions, we have to answer them, but otherwise look for a motion to approve the 2 single lot special assessment rolls, SL2N2W and SL2W24.
Thank you, City Managers. Anybody have any questions on this item? Commissioner Rubenstein, would you like to make that motion?
Motion.
You had public comment.
I'm sorry.
You had a public comment.
All right, so we'll open a public hearing for single lot assessment rolls SL2N24 and SL2W24 and special assessment roll.
I'm Sue Ann Wilkes again,
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you.
I'm kind of glad they were both in the same meeting, it helps. I came here 6 months ago at this single lot assessment and updated you all to the fact I had emailed you prior, but just re-updated you, and I had asked for a good faith discussion about changes to the very thoroughly legally tested International Property Maintenance Code. Our staff took it upon themselves to make changes to this code, and we talked about how they have transferred legally accepted liability from tenants to owners. And we talked about that. The lawyer was here. I thought it was perfect because I had asked all the way back in 2022 for a good faith discussion, a position of the city of why they thought it was okay. Just tell me something, let's just make it right. You know, can we do? Nothing then, nothing for 2 years, and nothing in 6 months. As I said, the lawyer was here, and I don't know what happens when you have public comment. It doesn't. If you guys had some sort of discussion, I imagine you would have bothered to tell the person. I wanted to read to you about from your own ordinances about our attorney. The attorney shall act as legal advisor to and be attorney and counsel for the commission, and shall be responsible solely to the commission. He shall advise any officer or department head in the city matters relating to his official duties when so requested, and shall file the city clerk a copy of all written opinions. When I asked you in 6 months ago, and if you have, I think it's derelict that you did not get me an answer. I think if you give up your access that is duly given to you by our ordinances, that responsibility lies with you commissioners. If you accept only information given from our lawyer, from someone outside of your body, that lawyer is responsible to you. They is your attorney, not the city's, not the management's, because you guys are supposed to be watching over the management. If we take information from them, mistakes can be made, and worse, you don't know what questions are asking to get the answers that he's giving you. So, I want to read it again. The attorney shall act and as attorney and counsel for the commission, and the commission only. So I just want to urge you, I think you've given up your right to speak to council because they tell you that it saves money. So it'd just be better if the manager did it, or just the mayor. I don't know how much the mayor actually speaks to the attorney, or if it's mostly the manager, because we hear a lot in these meetings from the manager of what the lawyer has said and this and that. And he literally sat here, the lawyer, after I talked last meeting, and said he would talk to you if it was okay, and he looked at Manager Chapman. So I don't know what you think it's saving by not talking to him, but I'd like to ask you, what is it costing this city in defunct legal pursuits because you're not talking to him? Because you guys aren't getting the straight story from the attorney you need to make the decisions. You guys aren't asking the follow-up questions. So I just want to urge you to take a hold of your own responsibility in legal matters. When we talk about, oh, this is costing the city this, and this is costing the city that, in legal fees, and this and that. No, that's you guys. You're to be working on the legal issues. So, again, I just urge you to take the responsibility for legal matters in this city more, and to be better advocates for the people who elect you. To not speak to a substantial property owner and substantial taxpayer after 2 years of good faith requests is really not excusable.
Thanks, Sue Ann. Again, this is a public hearing for single lot assessment rolls. Does anybody have any other comments on the single lot assessment rolls? We will close the public hearing on the single lot assessment rolls, SL 2N24 and SL 2W24. City Commission, any questions, comments? Commissioner Marble, would you like to make a motion to confirm the special assessment rolls?
Yes, thanks, Your Honor. Motion to confirm single lot assessment roll SL-2N-24 and SL-2W-24.
Support.
It's been moved and supported that we confirm the single lot of special assessment rolls. Anybody have any questions or comments? Commissioner Habusta.
Yeah, just one question, Mr. Mayor. In regards to the final special assessment list, the DDA is listed as a special assessment due, and I'm just wondering, is that, I just want to understand that a little bit better.
Yep, so the DDA is a property owner in the downtown, and this is the special assessment for, Kristen, will you help me out? Do you remember what it is? This comes up every year. The DDA gets assessed something because they own the property. They own a small sliver of property over by Cut Above. It's Cut Above. It's over by Cut Above. So their property owner, there's assessment. I believe the assessment was for a construction project, and that's their share of that portion, if I remember that correctly. So this comes up with the DDA every year, and I believe that's what it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we call the vote? So we have motion and support. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed on a unanimous vote. Moving into item F, communications. City Manager Chapman.
All righty, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next is one big topic that's kind of going to be broken down into 3 individual items. So this first one will be kind of a update and conversation regarding to the current efforts with the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which is a loan fund for wastewater treatment improvements, and the DWSRF, which is the drinking water side of those. So we'll have a presentation that kind of gets you into where we're at and where we're going, as well as a financial forecast in terms of some of our recommendations. So at this time, if Director Masterson, Director Two, City Engineer, Mr. Boyle wants to come up, we'll kind of go into the presentation first. Following that, we'll have Director Collins come up, we'll do some of the financial estimates, and then have a discussion with the commission. So as everybody's kind of coming up, the commission's aware, we put in an application to CWSRF last year. We were awarded the principal forgiveness as well as the loan. That's gonna kind of fund our kind of phase 1 program with the wastewater treatment plant. There were items because of the cost of construction that we had to push out on the wastewater treatment plant. We've also been awarded some principal forgiveness and loanability on the drinking water side, as well as another round of loan and principal forgiveness on the clean water side. So again, we want to give you guys some an update on where we're at with all this stuff and then where we are anticipating moving forward. So with that, I will open up the PowerPoint. And I will hand it off to Director Twos to talk about that's not what that looks like. About the DWSRF program.
You got some funky colors going on.
Yeah, it's not, I promise you, it doesn't look like it was supposed to be from the 80s on my laptop. But I guess that's as good as it's gonna get for right now. Yeah. Nope. I don't know. Sorry, Kirk.
It's all right. We can roll with it.
All right. Director Twos.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My first time up here with the DWSRF program, so we put some work in. We scored high enough to get up there. That first picture, if you want to go back, I just want to point that out. That was I took that picture. It was 4 degrees that day on a main break. So we do work when it's cold outside. So kind of chilly that morning. So, but yeah. So State of Michigan, CW and DWSRF. I chose a slide in here. Lots of money. 9 with lots of zeros on there. So there's lots of money coming into the state. But most importantly is the pie chart down there. The light green is for the CW, which is the wastewater side, and the blue is for the DW side. And so the DW side, we're playing a little bit of catch up to the CW at this moment in time. So as I said, we worked hard this past year. We improved some scoring. We ended up with a 16th ranking overall. We have a request for a total loan amount of just under $17 million. 13.5 of that would be at a 2% loan. $2 million of that would be principal forgiveness, and then we received a grant for lead service line replacements. As you've seen before with the CW, and you'll see it again, this is our schedule that we have to maintain. There's a lot of tight timelines on there. Right now we're on November 4th, hoping for commission approval on this so we can start the project as soon as possible. To move this forward, we are reaching out for conclusion at quarter 3.5 of next year. My slide guy's gone. Next one.
Next one.
Next one. So here's an overall view of our projects. We have a few there. If you want to rotate to the next one, it's a little easier to see them there. So we have our lead service line replacement. Big one that we have is Riverside Drive water main replacement. That's been top of the priority for 4 years now. Water intake protection, which I'll talk a little bit more about. Downtown bridge and underground crossings to shore those up, and then Ryan Ave looping water main project. So first and foremost is our lead service line replacements. This was 100% grant funded to us, which is fantastic. We just turned in our complete distribution system material inventory back in October. I will talk about more of that at the next meeting because there are things that I have to do for public engagement to meet guidelines. That DSMI calculated that we have the potential for 199 lead services and 186 galvanized lines, which leaves us at 385 targets for lead that we have to determine whether they're lead or not. The EPA just updated this lead and copper rule this year, just signed it a couple weeks ago. We now have only 10 years, so 2034 we have to have all the lead out of our system.
And we were anticipating 20 years. So they
Correct.
cut it in half.
Riverside Drive, this has been you say this was an issue when I first came here. It's been an issue since the late 1990s. Low water pressure, numerous main breaks, complaining of rusty water, stirred up water, no pressure, hydrants don't work down there. Do you have the beautiful hydrant footage, or?
Did you send it to me?
I did.
This one? Is it in the PowerPoint?
No, it's a separate video.
I don't know where's that. I don't recall seeing it.
All right,
Anyways,
that's all right.
some of the commissioners will remember, we sent it out. I think there's just a couple of you that were on the board at the time, but there was a hydrant flush. We had it fall all the way open, and it was just trickling water. Yeah, just trickling water. And obviously, the risk with that is that there's not the proper pressure amount for any kind of fire suppression through the fire department. There's a lot of issues.
All right, intake protection project. We only have one intake. It was built in 1901. It's serviced the city since then. Cost to replace this is in the multiple millions of dollars. So after 2020 dive inspection, we had a significant scour around the intake crib, which is an actual box that sits over the pipe, keeps out large debris. The intake pipe was also struck back in 1962. It was repaired in 1963. So it was recommended that to reduce scour, we'd add stone around the intake crib to protect the pipeline. We'll add some armor stone to that to prevent anchor strikes. Downtown Island Bridge and Crossings, we have 5 connections to this little downtown area down here where most of the commerce and people are at. So they're very important, they're very vital. They're getting old in time. We'd like to get these shored up by a lining project that will ensure that their reliability stays intact for years to come. Ryan Ave looping project was one put in there. It actually got us a few more points on our application. Creates loops in the distribution system, eliminates stagnant water. This will connect 4 dead ends. The big thing would also create a continuous feed from the historic standpipe, which we used this year for water tower painting. We have another water tower painting coming up in a few years. We're gonna go back to this tower. This addition of water main will help with that process. So the project engineering consultant with DWSRF funding, unlike the CWSRF funding, is we don't have to go through quality-based selection on this. Due to the timeline constraints and working with OHM, we have chosen OHM advisors. They were provided to us through the Michigan Water Navigator back in April of 2022. They have spent countless hours of free TA time with us, upwards of value of at least $50,000 in engineering work. They've been involved in over 7 key grant applications, including this one. and they placed a key role in securing our $109,000 TMF grant that we're currently working to identify lead service lines.
So that's the drinking water side of the projects that we're anticipating tackling the next couple of years. So is there any questions on the DWSRF side of things before we move into the CWSRF side of things? All right, thank you, Mr. Toombs.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move into the CW, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, and we'll hand it over to Engineer David Boyle. And we'll just kind of, again, tell you about where we've been, what we're planning on, and kind of where we're anticipating going.
So we're already into this program last year, and we already bid stuff, so now we're into the second phase, because this is a 5-year thing, so the way we have it set up is 3 phases, so
We're eligible for 5
Eligible.
years.
eligible for 5 years, yes, yep. It doesn't mean that we'd get funding, but we're eligible. So, but this year, we were successful in doing that, and actually, we were the number 2 municipality in the state for CWSRF, so. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to TJ from Donahue. He's gonna go through, because they did all the planning for everything here, so.
Thanks, Dave.
Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Pleasure to be back in Sault Ste. Marie again. Talk about where we've been and where we're going with our Clean Water State Revolving Fund. Going back to May of last year, we completed the application and were awarded funding for the first phase of the project. Like Dave mentioned, it's good for the application is good for 5 years, depending how many times you want to renew and what projects you have available. So that's kind of the history of where we were. What we included in the project at that time involved both collection system and the wastewater treatment plant. This is an overall map of all of the collection system needs that were identified in our initial study. They were kind of lumped into 6 categories or 6 phases, and we're slowly working through that, through the different phases and applications through the SRF. At the plant level, you'll notice almost everything has been highlighted in yellow, because almost everything at the plant was identified as a need. The last major plant upgrade was back in the 80s. Anything that has lasted 40 years in the wastewater environment is amazing. The fact that Brian and his team have kept it all running as long and as well as it has is a credit to them, 100%. So the project that we've awarded and will begin construction on potentially this year, if not early next year, is the FY24 project. Looking into the specifics of that project, Peck and Meridian was the focus of our repairs during the FY24 project, which involved the area highlighted there at Peck and Meridian. We're doing sanitary work, we're doing water work, we're doing stormwater work, obviously associated restorations. We're getting rid of basement flooding problems, combined sewer problems, deteriorated piping, and the combined sewers that lead to some of the struggles that they see at the wastewater plant. For the wastewater plant side of things, I changed the color scale on the map a little bit here. So this is what we're tackling in FY24 currently. Preliminary treatment, secondary treatment, disinfection, chemical feed, and general electrical and controls upgrades. Again, we're addressing the aging infrastructure at the facility, increasing reliability and operability, and also addressing some concerns that have been cited in the discharge permit the plant currently operates under. So to be a good steward of an opportunity that's presented to ourselves, we applied an intent to apply for the FY25 project. Like Dave mentioned, the city was ranked very highly, and that'll include more improvements to the wastewater plant and what we're calling phase 1 of Power Canal. So the area in blue is what we're actually going to be repairing in the proposed FY25 project. The area in yellow will be televised at that time as well. The state requires us to do televising independent from any design and repair work so that you can get a true understanding of what the problem is before you leap into that design. So this project specifically is going to address sanitary and storm again. Miscellaneous restoration is always going to be part of those projects, but it addresses aged piping and some conflicts with Power Canal, some improvements that are going to be happening along that route, and it gets all of the storm sewer and the sanitary sewer away from Power Canal and out of the way of any upcoming projects there. On the plant side, FY25 is planned in blue. This is going to address some major problems that the plant is still facing even after the FY24 project. Primary treatment, biological contactors, additional disinfection. We'll get into the solid side of the plant. What do we do with the material that doesn't get dissolved and cleaned up otherwise, and some electrical and heating improvements. Same story as FY24, aged equipment. We need better operability, better reliability. And in this project, we're actually going to start thinking ahead of what we know is coming in the next round of discharge permits to address those problems before it becomes something you have to be reactive to. We'll try to be proactive to some of those needs. That will then advance us into FY26. This is the third phase of the project that we see currently. Obviously, opportunities to continue to go for 2 more years, but we're just going to focus on this at the time being. More improvements at the plant, and then that second phase of Power Canal. Once we've televised everything in FY25, we can make the necessary repairs in FY26 to help address some of that deteriorated infrastructure, reduce that I&I problem, the groundwater that's seeping into the pipe and then getting transferred to the plant and then has to be treated once it's made it inside the sewer. The last phase of the plant project will address mainly the digester complex. That's the larger area in red. The rectangle adjacent to that will be additional chlorine contact tank surface or contact time. And this will just kind of bring a wrap to the needs we identified in the original project planning document. Disinfection, solids handling. Again, we're addressing existing deteriorated infrastructure and then planning ahead for what we anticipate for future discharge limits through the discharge permit process. Kind of an abbreviated version of the schedule you saw for drinking water. Because a qualification-based selection process has already been done for this project, we don't have to recap that. We're here tonight to discuss the project with the goal of having it out to bid by the middle of April of next year. And that'll put us in position, hopefully, to be ahead of the wave of projects that come out in May, which is exactly what we saw recently on the FY24 project. As it stands currently, $3.4 million has been awarded in principal forgiveness or grant money. The additional $25 million is at a 2% loan through the SRF. Full transparency, it's obviously less than what we got last year. 50% last year was unheard of. This is 10% plus. That's very good for what we're seeing in the market right now through the SRF system. There's never a guarantee that you're going to get grant funding when you apply for an SRF loan. So the fact that we're looking at $3.4 million is really outstanding compared to a lot of the other communities that applied this year. Any questions that I can field on the wastewater side of things?
Commissioners, any questions? I guess my question or concern is, so the fiscal year 24 project kind of forces then the completion of the 25 and 26 projects? I mean, is this project is not viable unless we do the 25 and 26, I take it?
The FY24 project is a huge step forward to the plant, independent of anything else we do. There are more needs at the plant that just did not fit into the budget that we had available to work with in FY24.
But if your question is, if we just did the 2024 and didn't do anything else, I don't want to say everything would work, but those projects would be done, they'd be tied up, and we would just have to figure out another way of doing everything else that we would have planned in 25, 26.
Correct.
And if we're awarded the money now, then we have to liquidate it within 5 years, you said, so
No.
the applications are good for 5 years,
Correct. The application that we submitted back in May of '23,
Okay.
that can be reused for 5 consecutive years. Whether or not you would accept funding this year or next year will be completely up to your discretion. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds for the SRF funding, if that grant funding will still be available next year or not.
okay. Commissioner Habusta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, my questions, I think, align closely with yours in regards to the debt service that we're adding to our city residents. I'm wondering if Director Collins can speak a little bit to the financial component towards that. I do, though, before she does that, want to recognize the work of the My Water Navigators. I had the opportunity to meet with them, present with them at MML. I know that OHM has been a great partner in this as a consultant, and great work by the team in working with them. So, but Director Collins, I wonder if you speak to the $25 million loan that would be put out there.
So that was gonna be our next part of the presentation, as Director Collins wants to start coming up. We put together kind of a cost estimate and some scenarios based on current borrowings, when they're falling off. It's a lot of numbers. I know we printed off kind of in a bigger sheet in color, so everybody can kind of see it. Yeah. Yes, 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 yes. No. No, Grant.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate your time. Because I think this is an important topic, and I think the money that we've been provided at a very low interest rate is worth really taking a good look at, and especially with the grant funding, principal forgiveness. So I want to go through this worksheet with you. This is what we do every time we look at debt for the sewer and water fund. And just to lay out, it's a worksheet, so across the top, you'll see alpha, A, columns A, B, right through U. And going down on the left side, we have the numbers of rows, 1 through 110. So that's just to help you as I walk you through. The fiscal impact. So when we take a look at new debt, we want to take a look at our debt service coverage ratio. So that calculation is this worksheet helps us to do that calculation. And what we're looking at is the city's ability to repay the debt in any given year. So if we take the net operating income, so we don't include capital investment and we don't include anything that's non-cash, over the debt service that we need for any given year. So now I'll walk you through this schedule. So at the top we show, the top half is operating revenue, and then in the years, the columns, we start with 2022 just to give you some history. We have 2024, the fiscal year we just closed in column J, and then we have the 2 budget years in K and L. The blue column is our first year of projected. So projected starts there and goes all the way to the right in the columns. And the projected is based on 2% increase in both revenue and expenditures. So it's kind of a low number right now, but historically 2% has been pretty good for Consumer Price Index. At the top, going downward, we start with revenues, and then we have operating expenses, and we come to, in the net of the two, in row 33, operating income or loss. So in any given year, you can see how much more the revenue is than the operating expenses. Right below that, starting in row 35, we have non-operating. So we're talking about interest earnings, that's revenue, and then transfers in and out, depreciation, and then we have net income available for debt service. And when I say depreciation, we add it back because that's a non-cash item. So that row 46 is the net income available for debt service. Are you all following me so far? Okay. So in the blue column, you can see that's our first year projected. We have $5.1 million available for debt service. That's when we take care of all of our operating expenses, and we have that much available. Now I'm going to look down below that number. Starting in row 48, we have existing debt service requirements. So in this area, you can see everything we've already agreed to. We already have amortization schedules. It's closed. We end with the one we just closed in September, 2024 CW SRF that we were talking about last year at this time. The row 74 is the total existing debt service requirements, and I can see in the blue column, the first year projected, we have $2.3 million for our debt service. That includes principal and interest. So we have quite a bit of room there between the net income of $5.1 million and $2.3 million. When we look down further, we see projected and proposed debt, the debt we're talking about tonight. The dark green column, or row in 77, is the one that you guys approved before. This is one we were talking about for the 2025 construction season. And we are thinking of closing those capital improvement bonds. It's for the Peck and Meridian SRF ineligible. So that capital improvement bond, we're talking about closing that in January 2025. The lighter green rows 78 and 79 are the two issuances for 2025 that Kirk and TJ talked about, and Dave. It's the DW SRF and the CW SRF, so drinking water and clean water. And those are around 630,000 between the two debt service. The yellow column is a potential debt for the fiscal year 2026. So the yellow column is all the stuff that we were unable to achieve so far that was discussed recently. If you go down in the blue column, the total water and sewer supported debt service goes from 2,000,003 up to 4 million with all that prospective debt added, and the debt coverage ratio is 1.28. So that number is a pretty darn good number, 1.28, because anything over 1, if you think about it, when you're dividing the two, your net operating income divided by your debt, if it's over 1, it means you have more income than the debt needs. When we look at this, we want to go to column N through R next. I've shown it in pink above. This is where we get ourselves into a little bit of time when we're going to use funds on hand if we go ahead with this. So I have shown transfers in and use of funds on hand in row 40, and I've highlighted in pink. Column N, year 2028, is where we would have had a debt service coverage ratio of below 1. But I'm saying we can pull $320,000 out of our funds on hand. We can, knowing this 5 years ahead, we can start saving now and have that funds on hand. I've already come up with kind of some plans of where we'll come up with those funds. We have some capital reserves. We'll set it aside. We need to do that. If we were to borrow the entire 34 million, we would need to do that for those 5 years I've shown in pink. And that total is 3.2 million. So it's a big number, but that keeps our debt service coverage ratio to 1. We went through this whole scenario with our bond advisors. They said, well, it looks reasonable, it looks doable, but let's take a look at your maximum borrowing. So when they took a look at that, they said, you're running up on some pretty tight numbers for allowability. We are not eligible to borrow that full 34 million in a capital improvement bond, which are rated differently than the SRF bonds. If we were to get about 14 million of it in SRF and borrow the 20 million of it that's remaining, we could do it and all of this would work out. But if we don't do that, we're going to have to start, I think you call it design engineering, Dave?
Value engineering.
Value engineering?
Value
Okay, thank you. We will have to value engineer again,
Right.
and
And
we're
just-
very familiar.
Real quick, I'm gonna cut Kristen off really quick. The loan highlighted in yellow on your sheet, the 2026, this is a $34 million loan. We've built in an assumption, kind of worst case scenario, in terms of, we went to the market, we didn't get any CW or DWF loan, we had to go to the market. The difference is between 2% interest rate and 4% interest rate on the market. Difference is also 20 years on the market, 30 years, I don't remember what that
This
one was.
one in yellow is 25 years, which is the number we could go, but then we have 30 years if we get an SRF.
Right.
Or at least they were this last time around.
So we kind of built in worst case scenario. If we were able to get CW or DW for that, then it changes it, but it changes it in the positive. It doesn't change it in the negative. This is worst case scenario, just for that one item, so.
I'm glad City Manager Chapman mentioned that. These are worst case scenarios. We like to look at worst case scenarios when we're talking about debt. It's very important to be prepared for the worst. And the way that bids have come back, you know, I'm hopeful that worst-case scenario really is the worst. I wanted to also just let you know that every time we look at debt, we take a good look well ahead. So this is just that advance look that we would want to do. This is not promising anything. You will be brought those decisions when we're ready for those decisions. Are there any questions on what we have before you?
I got a quick question for you, Kristen. So, transfers in, use of funds, you said we would have to save that money prior to the project. Do we have a bond reserve fund, or what's the balance of that fund? And this is contained in the enterprise fund, correct?
Yes.
So
and
we're
the-
borrowing, what is that fund intended for now? Is it a bond reserve fund?
It
or
would be
is
a
it
brand new
equipment
fund. It
and-
would be a brand new account. It would be a brand new segregated cash account.
So this is subject to us being able to save enough money so that we can get to 1.0 debt coverage ratio for
Yes.
5 years?
That's the plan. If we get the feeling that this is what we want to pursue, we will begin that process.
Is that fiscally responsible? What would our S&P bond raters say? I know you had Warren Kramer look at it, but
That's what he thought, was that this plan looked reasonable and he's always looking at it from the perspective of a bond rater.
so in essence, we're deferring increases in rates that we should be doing to cover a project like this by stockpiling some money before the bond repayment kicks in.
I would say, I would phrase it a little differently if that's okay. What I would say is that we would have gradual and steady rate increases as we have always done. And that is the projected 2% increase in revenue. Now that rate might be 3%, depending on how much consumption drops off or increases. It's most likely that the rate increases would be slightly higher than that to bring in that kind of revenue increase. But
But we
I
don't
would
have
not
reserve
say
at
we're
this time.
we're not deferring. I would say we're planning ahead in anticipation of this obligation.
But we don't have that reserve at this time. We're anticipating creating a reserve.
Correct.
But how much do we set aside in capital every year?
The capital reserves do exist. They are projected to each sewer and water, each have a sizable balance to help support this type of project. In the meantime, like to pay for the design engineering until we come through with the bond financing. And at the fiscal year end this year, we're projecting around $2 million each.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner?
Commissioner Gage,
So, but the transfers in that reserve fund would only be needed if we don't get full funding from the state revolving.
Correct.
fund.
That's
So
if
we go
this
to the
worst,
private bond market, right. That's
if the
case
worst case scenario comes true, then
So
we would
maybe it
need that
could work out
3.2.
great. I mean, it'd be lovely.
It would be lovely if we could get the SRF. It would be even lovelier if we could get the principal forgiveness again.
Beautiful.
And I know they're working on it.
Something we should call our state rep.
The mic. Just to qualify, we were less optimistic this time around to get principal forgiveness, which we were fortunate to get. But I want to be clear, if we go for another round, I promise you we won't get any. Maybe we will, but we're not counting on it, period. So again, another worst-case scenario, if we get money, that's in the positive, but I don't want to come across that any principal forgiveness is on the table at all in these conversations moving forward. We feel fortunate we got it the second go-round. We weren't anticipating it, but we really are not anticipating it for any future rounds.
Is that something that engaging with our lawmakers can assist with, or, I mean?
So I mean,
Not really.
I think a lot of the, and you guys can correct me wrong, a lot of the money that went towards principal forgiveness was a lot of the money that came from the feds through ARPA, Build Back Better, and all that stuff.
Okay.
So everything was infused with one-time cash. So unless you know a guy who wants to dump in, or gal, I don't want to make that be like a political statement, unless you know a person that wants to infuse everything with a one-time cash,
Or a 5-time.
yeah, then it's more than likely not going to happen.
The real gift is the 2% and the 30 years. I'm not sure if they're looking at continuing on these 30-year schedules, because we used to always have 20-year schedules. But these are gifts, and these are I mean, if you look at the amortization schedules for the 25 million, just use that example, over the 30 years, 25 million, 10 million is interest only.
And the 30-year bond period is because we're considered a disadvantaged community under the program. If we were not a disadvantaged community in the program, it would only be a 20-year program. But because we're, whatever criteria we hit is disadvantaged, that's why they extend that time period out.
You done? Commissioner Rubenstein?
What's the, an example, I guess the worst case scenario, if we don't move forward and a major component fails at the wastewater treatment plant? What does that cost look like for something, if you can give an example, and how does that get funded in an emergency situation like that?
Well, a good example would be just recently, one of the final clarifiers failed, and that would be $1 million repair. What is it? 2 trains of RBCs would be about 8 million, and we're at about 75%. So we have 16 RBCs, 12 of them are operational currently. So 4 of them we can't repair. So you're looking at just 8 of them would be roughly 5 million.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bosbus Rath?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, great presentation. It's very informative, and I think we all know that the wastewater treatment plant does, I mean, it's old, and so, I mean, these are things that I believe they have to be looked at to be repaired, because, like you said, something could happen, and you're looking at millions. So I just wanted to say, you know, it's a lot of money, but I do think that it is unfortunately needed to be done, and it's a good way to do it, as Kristen pointed out. So, you guys, you always do such a thorough job at looking at everything and all the worst case scenarios and stuff, so I do appreciate that, so thank you.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Just another comment, outside of major repairs like that, I've had to deal with issues on Peck Street, and I know citywide there's been issues, so in my mind, to not look to move forward, you're talking about significant cost on homeowners across the city, because it's a pain when it happens, and it sucks, and it can be expensive, and it's just not good. So there's some ancillary things that would come up with not moving forward.
Commissioner Habusta?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Collins, and just in looking at these numbers, as you generated operating revenue, you mentioned a 2% increase. Can you explain to me also, when you projected those numbers, what kind of decrease you might have projected in water consumption?
It has historically been 1.03% decrease in consumption. We had a few blips when we got the new meters. So we had an increase in consumption because we caught a lot of issues as we were working through every meter in the 5,400 customers. But that was kind of a one-time only. We're seeing now the typical, you buy a new toilet, you buy a new dishwasher, your consumption goes down. So to keep rates steady, to keep revenue up, going up 2%, rates may be increasing more like around 3%. Rough math. But we look at it every year, and we talk about it every year at budget time, which is the responsible thing to do. I also did not really mention in that worksheet, when you look at the existing debt, you can see that all the zeros coming out. You can see them kind of dropping off. So it's a beautiful thing that we have all these 20-year amortization schedules of the past dropping off. So these are bigger, but they're fewer. So it's a small positive. Are there any other questions?
Just a comment. I still remain concerned about just adding additional debt services onto our city budget, and as well as onto the backs of our residents, whether that comes through increases in water bills, and I just think we need to be really careful with this. Thank you.
I did just have a couple comments. I do understand the significance and the need and the timing of it. I just feel like we've been backed into a corner with this project, especially when you start talking about 24, 25, 26. I really would have liked to have a work session or something so that we could have a better understanding of all of these numbers. They don't look pretty to me on the sheet, and I want to know what's going to happen to the rates for our users, and if there are any other potential variations of the project that could achieve the same result, but maybe not quite as extensive. Is tonight the only night that we can do this based on this timeline? I just don't like the way these things push through.
No, we brought it to you guys with enough time to be able to push it if you need more time to digest it.
I need more time.
So
I don't know what anybody else is thinking.
it would be the next, or the first two items. It would be the first two items in, G.
All right, so do you want to skip to those and see if we have consensus on approval or
Commission's
table
wish,
or
however you guys want to do
or
it.
have a work session? Commissioner Gage.
Motion to table, item G1.
Support.
There's a motion to table. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Rubenstein.
How long out can we table them for?
We just gotta hit it before December. So we got the other meeting. If you guys want a workshop, we can probably schedule a workshop before the next commission meeting. That'll give you some time to look over some things. We can put together some more information, sit down and have a conversation with it, and then take it up that night. So I mean, if that's what the commission wants, and that's what the commission shall get.
I think tabling motion means we have to bring it up to the next meeting, though, correct?
It
Doesn't mean that I have to.
Do you want
doesn't
to refer it
necess-
back? Okay.
It doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, I know what you guys are looking for. If you wanna bring it back to
Okay.
the
Would you
next
prefer
meeting,
that I refer it back to staff?
just motion table, it's fine.
Okay.
You
I
got
mean,
it.
unless somebody else isn't comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that. I know where you guys are.
Without the expectation that it'll be on the next meeting, we need to have a work session prior to the
Right,
item being brought back.
right, we'll have, so I mean, I guess I missed on that one. So, we'll have a
Work session.
we'll have a workshop before the next commission meeting. We can schedule it for 5:30, going up until the next commission meeting. Is that doable? I'm not even looking at you.
I'm not going to be at that one.
We'll have to pick a date, because we do have another meeting next week, next Monday, too.
You could meet about it then.
Oh,
So we have 2 meetings this week.
I got what I'm missing. Okay. Because I was thinking, when I was saying before the meeting, I was thinking on the 18th before the meeting.
Anyway, let's
So moved.
consider the tabling motion. Any questions, comments? All in favor of tabling item G1, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Do you want to handle G2?
Sure do. Motion to table item G2.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor of tabling, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great presentations, though. Yep. All right, so we'll move on into item G, business items number 3, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request to purchase and approve a bid for some fire hydrants. This was bid out by the water department. We received 3 bids back. We are looking to make a recommendation to approve the bids or award the bid to Ferguson Waterworks for the purposes of fire hydrants and adapters.
Thank you, City Manager. It's a pretty straightforward one. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Habusta, would you like to take that one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I motion to approve Ferguson Waterworks for the purchase of fire hydrants and stores adapters.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Under G, business items, number 4, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request to award a bid for the Park Place lift station. This item was bid out. The bid tabs are included in the item. Fun note, we are going to be switching from Muffin Monsters to Vogel Schurfeners. So we would look for a motion to award the bid to Crane Engineering for one open channel commutator to be used for Park Place Station, and a motion to adjust the capital budget by $2,000 for the purchase.
Just had one question.
Commissioner Gage.
What was that word?
Bogle.
Muffin Monster?
Muffin Monster. We're getting away from Muffin Monsters and we're getting Vogel Song Open Channel
Combinator.
Common
Common,
Sounds like it in Frankenmuth.
I could move. You want me to make some motions? I'm happy to.
sure.
I
It's your
motion
last
to.
meeting.
I motion to award
Let
the
them have
bid
them
to
all.
Crane Engineering for $26,937.33 for one open channel commutator. Anyway, to be used. There we go. To be used for the Park Place lift station.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Commissioner
I
Gage.
further move to adjust the capital equipment budget by $2,000 with funds coming from the sewer capital reserves.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any questions, comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion also passed unanimously. Thank you very much. G, business items, number 5, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next is a request to enter in a grant application with MDOT for the Canal Trail Phase 3 portion of our Canal Trail project. The motion would see the third phase of the canal project move forward. In your item is a location map. Bonnie, if you want to throw it up on the screen really quick, hopefully, hey, it looks good this time. But it would be this green or this Tiffany's blue color right here, moving from this stretch. So this item would approve the resolution authorizing us to submit the request for the funding, as well as establishing a match that would be funded out of the grant or out of the general fund. Just kind of as a note, if we don't get this grant, we won't come back and ask for more out of the general fund. We'll just find another grant program to kind of go after for this one. So 2 motions, motion to approve the resolution and a motion to create project budget for the trail Phase 3 project.
Any questions or comments for the City Manager? Commissioner Hubusta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to voice some concern. A 35% match is significant when we're looking at $204,000 from the general fund. I think that's significant. I think we need to take that under consideration. And I'm not so in support of that large of a match. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else? Commissioner Bosbus-Rath, would you like to make those motions?
Sure. Motion to approve the resolution in support of the Transportation Authoritative Program Grant implementation for the Power Canal Trail Phase 3.
Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed? Motion passed 5-1. Commissioner Bosbus-Rath.
Thank you, Mayor. Motion to create a project budget in the amount of $513,700 funded with $309,400 TAP grant and $204,300 local match from the general fund.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Any questions, comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
Motion passed 5-1. Thank you very much. Under G, business items, number 6, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next is a follow-up consideration from the previous commission meeting regarding the tax abatement policy. From what I understand, since I wasn't at the meeting, there were some concerns about the policy, so it was sent back to staff. In that time, staff and I met with Commissioner Rubenstein. We answered a few questions. There are no proposed changes to the policy this time around that you saw from the first review a couple weeks ago. So we look for a motion to adopt the policy as presented.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions for City Manager or Director Freeman at this time? Commissioner Gage.
I just want to kind of reiterate, because I know there was kind of some concern a little bit too, like, this is really, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I would love it if I was corrected if I was wrong, but this is really a set of guidelines more than it's a strict must adhere to policy. This is more kind of advertising that this is something that folks can potentially come to the commission and ask for. They can currently, right, without this.
Correct. So they can currently without this. Really what the policies aim to do is, for one, get some parameters from the commission on what's an acceptable or comfortable level with the tax incentive. Two, have a process in place that staff and I can come to a consistent recommendation for the commission, and then someone to fall back on for the commission when they're taking these up. So, I mean, there's all sorts, as I listed earlier, there's all sorts of different tax abatement programs out there. And, you know, right now, we just have spirited debates on what's we feel is acceptable, what's not. With this, we have direction. We'll be able to make recommendations to the commission that's kind of rooted in some kind of philosophy
Right.
and methodology.
And further too, sorry, Commissioner, each of these have to be approved individually by the commission, so we still retain the right to say yes or no to each individual one. This is a new thing, so if we get into 6 months, a year, 2 years from now, we can change it arbitrarily on our own and be like, okay, well, that was too much, and let's go back and make it a little bit lower or a little bit higher or whatever. We have that full discretion and jurisdiction. I'm just making sure that that's cleared, so everybody understands that, right?
Yeah, I would phrase it differently, but yes,
Yeah,
it's
arbitrarily, yeah.
it's a policy. Policies can be changed through majority action of the commission. And yes, this does not open the door for us to approve things administratively. Most of them still have to have public hearings. Most of them still has to have public notice. Most of them still have to have, all of them have to have a body approve them. Either the Brownfield program eventually come up with the commission, or if they go right to the commission. They still have to have the governing body's approval on it. Again, it's just a tool to help us get into a consistent methodology to make recommendations to the commission.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I like it, so that's all.
And Commissioner Rubenstein.
And, you know, before we,
Please.
and you know, before we had pushed this a meeting, I brought up the scenario of most of the downtown establishments are retail restaurants. So how many FTE jobs are they actually producing to hit that certain percentage? And when I sat down with City Manager Chapman and Director Freeman, it was I was reminded of the fact that even if you hit the bare minimum across the board, you're still hitting that 70% threshold, and that last 30% really can come from a variety of different areas. So I feel totally comfortable with it. Thank you both for taking the extra time to sit down and talk through it. So yeah, most developers or people who are looking to do work are going to be getting the majority of it anyways. And then there's extra incentive there to do things like add additional housing or create additional jobs. And one last point of clarification, it is direct job creation, correct? So indirect job creation does not fall into that
Correct, yes,
category?
there's two types of jobs, direct and indirect. So if I, as a business, will be opening up a business and actually hiring people on my payroll, that's a direct job. If I, as a property owner, rehabilitate a space that lures in another business and they bring on employees, that does not count unless you have some kind of written agreement with a potential tenant moving forward. But if you come in, if somebody came in and said, I'm going to rehabilitate the space, and somebody's going to come in and maybe create 10, 20 jobs, we're not going to count that. But if somebody came in with a written partnership where they were actually going to be the job creator, we would count that. So yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Habusta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've had an opportunity to speak with a number of business owners since we last met regarding this. The concern that is often brought up to me, and I think that a lot of this is on different pages, but when we look at the maximum eligible award, one of the questions often brought up to me was, what are we offering other developments that happen throughout town? When we look at different pilot programs that have been offered around town in recent years and have been given to developers. I think those two things are different, but I'm wondering if you could explain some of that and maybe explain the maximum eligible award. Does that come directly from the state in each of these cases?
Yes, the maximum eligible, the time period, the max time period is in state law. So you can't, like for Oprah, I believe it's 15 years, the commission can't say 20. It's all set up by state law.
And can you just explain to me, when we look at local tax abatements in regards to, what through the state, how does that compare? And again, I think maybe there isn't a comparison that's been brought up to me by multiple people in regards to pilots and things along those lines.
I guess I don't follow you, I apologize.
No, I appreciate that. One of the things that business owners have said to me is that we're giving larger pilots to developers to come in, and then these tax abatements are offered to developers for obsolete buildings or things like that.
So pilots is another program that's set up by state statute. So if somebody doesn't meet that criteria, then they're not eligible for a pilot. So only certain projects have the ability to request a pilot. So none of these programs are crafted locally. None of them are, the criterias aren't, aside from this policy, but the actual like terms of the programs, they're not crafted locally. That's all state law, everything. These programs, pilot eligibility, all that stuff is state law. So if somebody's coming in and saying, well, I'm opening up a mom and pop shop, I want a pilot, they're probably not eligible for it.
Thank you. That's a great clarification for people who may not fully understand. I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? And I just wanted to make sure that Sue Ann Wilkes had said she wanted to speak to this item, but I think she's gone. Okay. Commissioner Rubenstein, would you like to make a motion on this?
Motion to adopt the tax abatement policy as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving along. City manager announcements and updates. I see there are a couple items on there for you.
Just a couple of things. The organizational meeting will happen next Monday, November 11th at 4 p.m. And our December 2nd commission meeting will be at LSSU because they're being they're being awesome hosts this year and bringing us back up there.
And will we be televised at that one? It was
We-
YouTube only, wasn't it?
YouTube only.
Okay.
YouTube only. We don't have the ability to do the charter, but it will be live streamed on YouTube. Yes.
Any questions for city manager on his two items or any others? Commissioner Rubenstein.
And City Manager Chapman, I believe moving forward, it sounds like the first December meeting every year will be on campus. Is that the plan, or tentative plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, so moving along, item I is matters presented by the public. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move into item J, which is matters presented by the City Commission. Commissioner Rubenstein.
Just a quick happy birthday to my oldest daughter, Alaire. She turned 6 today.
Aw.
And you're at a meeting.
We should have done a resolution for her.
Happy birthday, Alaire. Anybody else? Commissioner Gage.
Your Honor.
We've
I
been
am
waiting
gonna
for
give
this moment.
a wonderful farewell speech, so bear with me.
Take it away.
Well, folks, here we are again. It's really hard for me to once again bid farewell to the City Commission for the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Though this time is different than the last, I still have to say it's just as hard to say goodbye to being part of such a wonderful group of people caring about the community I love. Hope my fellow commissioners won't mind me taking some time to share some thoughts, and I promise I'll be brief. First and foremost, I appreciate the trust that you all, my fellow commissioners, put in me by appointing me to fill the vacancy caused by the passing of our late former colleague Shane Miller. Like so many in this community, I was deeply saddened by his passing, and I miss his presence in our town. He was a friend of mine and to so many in the city, and I tried as hard as I could to fill his shoes. To honor his legacy was very important to me, even for this short time. To my fellow commissioners, what can I say? I've been tremendously honored to serve with you, to move our community forward, to agree with you, to disagree with you. I've loved laughing with you and messing with you and voting with you to maintain the positive momentum of our town. When I left the commission before, I felt sadly that my career made me leave a little bit too early, and it was tough to leave because I felt like I left some things unfinished. Leaving now, I feel fully resolved that our city is in wonderful hands, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you all giving me the chance to do that unfinished work. I will always love and appreciate my strong side friendships that I made with Commissioners Bosworth and Habusta. We've shared Mentos, a love of showing up early, tolerance for my never-ending hilarious jokes that we pretend not to hear during meetings. You guys have made this fun, and please promise not to pick on the new guy. His hair is a bit longer than mine. He's not as funny, but he'll be a great addition to the strong side. I also want to highlight the close personal bonds I made with my fellow Commissioners Rubenstein and Marble. Not only am I honored to call you both my friend, but I've appreciated getting to know your values and priorities, and I'm completely confident that you have our city's best interests at heart. You're both truly great commissioners, and it's been a tremendous honor to serve with you. I hope we keep solving the world's problems together over beer, or as I call it, Bible study. I'm going to skip the Bauer part because he's not here. I read this to him the other day, so it's all good. To our honor, the mayor, they say you should never meet your heroes. Well, Don Gary met me in 2009 when I ran for city commission the first time, and his life has never been better since. Thank you for your friendship, your leadership, and your willingness to listen to my position on issues and make me feel like my opinions are truly valued. I think I speak for all the commission in saying that I appreciate how much you hear all of us, give weight to our views, and help us reach consensus. I hope that our community knows how truly lucky we are to have you as mayor. Our city is in very good hands with you at the helm, and we're all better for it. To City Manager Chapman, I've appreciated getting to know you, to see your heart and dedication, and to call you a personal friend as well, and to be part of serving the city with you. Being a city manager can be an extremely difficult and at times thankless job, and I feel like it's important to recognize the sacrifices that come along with the service you've given to this community. I know it hasn't always been an easy road, but a steady sea never made a skilled sailor. I did say that right, so that's good. Okay. To the city staff, I want to quickly thank you all for the work that you do to keep our community moving forward. The roughly over 125 staff, is that number close? 110, okay. That make up our city employees. You truly are the lifeblood of all that we do. From every department head to each individual city employee, I want to extend my deep appreciation for all that you do to keep our community a great place to live. If our democracy in this American experiment is to work as it should, I wish that our political leaders, state, federal, and otherwise, could learn a thing or two from the cohesive collegial bonds we've had on this commission. In our increasingly more divided society, we seem sadly to focus on much of what divides us rather than what unites us. I appreciate more than I can say that I've been able to serve on this governing body that focused on moving the community forward even when we didn't fully agree. Lastly, and in closing, I will just ask, like I said, for grace for the new guy. He's certainly Commissioner Talentino won't be as funny as I am. I know he's not nearly as handsome as I am. But knowing him as long as I have, I think he'll be a great commissioner and will bring a lot of insight and wisdom. It's been an amazing honor to serve with you again, to carry on the people's work here in this commission. I'm sad to leave, but I've never been more optimistic about the city's future. So there you go.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. That was nice.
And with that, I motion to adjourn.
Support.
No chance for rebuttals, eh? Nope. It's been motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.